I'm paid by the Republican Party to denounce the Democrats so that I can make the Democrats a more effective party against the Republicans because I want to defeat the Republicans, unlike the Democrats who want to become the Republicans. No, I hate Republican politicians. I hate conservatism. I hate reactionary politics. I abhor these things. I think they're very violent in its most maximalist. When it reaches its logical conclusion, it is incredibly violent. All right. So, couple things. One, anarchist militants have waged campaigns in the United States and Europe, conspiring to undermine the foundations of Western civilization through their brutal attacks, which is, again, Nazi sentiment. The State Department will designate these four Antifa groups as foreign organizations. That's another thing that we're going to be talking about. Also, Trump is at 33% approval on immigration among Indies. That is an atrocious number for him. Okay? As I told you, as I said time and time again, as I repeated myself a million times over, sometimes you say, Hasan, why do you repeat yourself so much? It's like, yo, I repeat myself because it's a necessity, okay? Because unfortunately, these problems are unchanging. But I told you this in the lead up to the election. And I told you this in the aftermath of the election victory for Trump, that people were going to see the Republican legislation and experience the Republican legislation and realize maybe this wasn't a good idea. I need you to understand this. Okay? This has always been the case. What is this? Make it stop. Asman shatters the dipshit meter. Oh my God. My goat is coming after Asmongold? No way. Anyway, let's get back to this. Sorry. What I was saying is, I was just looking at something here. What I was saying is, Republicans think they like Republican voters think they like Republican policy. But once they actually experience Republican policy, they hate it. Okay? Okay, Republicans think they don't. You're right. My apologies. They don't think. But they assume that because they're heavily propagandized into believing this kind of nonsense, they assume that they will be better off. They are told a lie that these policies, once implemented, will yield tremendous bounty for them. What they don't realize until after the fact is that those policies are actually very damaging for them. We saw this with the abortion situation, right? What is this? Oh my God, I can never leave my dog for 2 weeks. Low-key, I reacted quickly and unfollowed him after the weird AI meme of Kirk's wife, but I refollowed because he's a good dude overall. He's a good dude, yes. Kyle he's the GOAT. He's Mr. Dark Woke. That's why we do the Fell for It Again award, right? Ironically enough, there's an even sadder reason why Democrats don't have a Fell for It Again award. Do you want to know what that is? It's because Democrats, even when they're lying to you, don't overpromise. And that's part of the reason why they lose elections anyway. That's why there isn't a Fell for It Again award. Because even those who vote for the Democrats kind of know that they're not going to deliver on any of the shit that they're voting for. And it's largely because the Democrats have that attitude that it's like, yeah, we're going to offer you nothing other than the fact that we're not going to directly send you to concentration camps. Democrats promise nothing and still somehow underdeliver. Republicans promise the world and do sometimes deliver. And when that delivery happens, everybody goes, oh my God, this delivery was a shit sandwich. I did not realize until after the fact. And I know we sit around and we say, dude, you're so stupid. Wait, this is, yeah. Got an Amazon package with nothing in it, Lamau. I didn't order anything. Yeah, this is the Democratic Party. This is what voting for the Democrats is like. Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about how and why the commentary botched the post-2024 discourse autopsy so hard, and I think it has something with the impulse to depict Trump's victory as larger than life. It wasn't. It was narrow situational win that we could have avoided. It is also because of the same ambitions that the Democrats have had consistently. The real reason why they botched this, okay, the real reason why they botched this is because I was there. I've told them, and they wouldn't listen. I was a part of the autopsy conversations as well. Whenever they asked, like, oh, the Joe Rogan to the left, the Joe Rogan to the left, the Joe Rogan to the left, like every part of that conversation, I would say it's not about the medium, it's about the message. It's not about finding a million Joe Rogans of the left that are going to be Democrats. It's about the policies. This is the problem at the heart of the Democratic Party, that they do not center the issues of the working class in their politics. Okay? And they did not listen. And the reason why they did not listen is because they just didn't want to change. So the autopsy in that situation wasn't actually because the autopsy was a failure in that situation. It wasn't a failure because it was because they were just like too stupid to understand the problem. For some, it was, right? But for many in the establishment wing of the party, the reason why they failed to recognize the failure to recognize the actual problem was actually deliberate. They did not want to change their trajectory. They still want to be a neoliberal centrist party. Win or lose, they want to maintain neoliberalism. Trump might be dead, not a drill. Shut the up. That's, yeah, one of the funniest parts about this conversation was like when I kept talking about like the Democrats cannot podcast their way out of this problem. Okay. Ken Martin, who after this interview took place on CNN actually did end up becoming the DNC chair. But Ken Martin listened to me on a CNN hit, right? CNN was interviewing all the candidates for DNC chair. Ken Martin, who ended up becoming the DNC chair, was the person who they showed that clip to. Okay? And I still remember CNN played that clip of me saying the Democrats don't understand. It's not just about the medium. It's not just about finding a Joe Rogan to the left. You cannot podcast your way out of this problem. You actually have to retailer your policies around the material harm that the working class is experiencing. Ken Martin heard that and said, I agree with Hasan on everything he said. And that's why we need a Joe Rogan of the left. It was such a perfect distillation of all of the anger and resentment I have to those with institutional power in the Democratic Party. I was just like, are you serious? Here's the video. Yeah.
All right, this comes as Democrats right now.
No, but this is not the actual. Oh, here it is. Yeah. Here. This is perfect. Here. Yes. Look.
5, you're still operating on the old boundaries. You're like, no, Israel's the most moral democracy in the Middle East, maybe in the world, right? Like, and I think that the major generational divide that is, I think, in a very damaging way, feeding into the mistrust overall that people have with mainstream news in general, is coming from that.
Joni O'Sullivan, CNN, Los Angeles.
Yeah, it was so thoughtful and important to hear that. Ken Martin is out.
So that's not the last note, though, because I say, look, here, right here. Look, this is the main point I was making here.
It's 100% a policy thing.
Because I'll say, right?
Look.
Well, I think that they need to change their policies.
It's a policy thing.
Yes, it's 100% a policy thing.
Because I'll say, right?
Which is the boring answer. Although it would be very self-serving for me to say, I'm the left's Joe Rogan, the Democratic Party should give me millions of dollars. That's not going to solve this problem. What will solve this problem is if the Democratic Party actually adopts real left-wing economic populist messaging instead of purposely avoiding that stuff because they're terrified of upsetting their corporate donors. I think Trump speaks to mail insecurities better, and I think...
So, anyway, so that was the major point I was making, right? You can't podcast your way out of this problem. Let's look at Ken Martin's reflection on this.
Important to hear that. Ken Martin is out front. He is running to be the next chair of the DNC. He's the current chairman of the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party. And I really appreciate your time, Ken. So, you hear Hasan Piker. 7.5 million people watched him on an election night. He's all in as a Democrat, but then he's talking to Joni about how the video game and fitness space online is dominated by right-wing people talking about it, right? Not necessarily everyone into fitness, right? That there's that gap. And he says that Trump speaks to male insecurities better. He speaks to the anger. Democrats don't speak to that anger at all. I'm quoting Hasan here. He's very direct about the problem. Do you agree with him?
Well, first off, Aaron, thanks for having me on tonight. And actually, I think Hassan's right in most of what he says there, and particularly as it relates to the fact that the Republicans have been, since the 2020 election, a constant drumbeat of misinformation, disinformation, and lies on platforms that the Democratic Party really wasn't competing in. We live in a 24/7, 365-day information environment now that we have to be competing in a much better way. Podcasts, streaming services, TikTok, social media, of course. My two boys, 22 and 20, they get their information from TikTok, right? And so we have.
They just, they go, okay, I think the solution is podcast more. This was almost a year ago at this point. She specifically asked him about that, though. I know. The media framing on this is always on the aesthetic side. How do I stream with the song for one day and see more hate online than 5 years of streaming put together? People got to chill out. Welcome to the big leagues, Jake and Bake. This is my everyday existence, big dog. Unfortunately, you just got to tune it out. This problem, or this bad read, this inability to make the appropriate assessment by the Democrats, I think, is more cynical than attributed to stupidity. Okay, it's more cynical. I think it's because a lot of the analysts and a lot of the consultant class want to make sure that they just still abide by the old method, the corporate, the corporate cynicism that we experience, that we see in the Democratic Party's messaging, the smug elitism that we encounter from their messaging actually comes from a place of wanting to win or lose by their own methods. Win or lose, they want to maintain their grip of power. Okay? They want to still control the levers of the party. They want to still maintain a private-public partnership agenda, a neoliberal agenda. They do not want to actually move in the direction of socialism. They are zealots. They are ideological zealots. And that is the reason why when they look to Zoran Mamdani's victory, his unprecedented, unexpected success, both in the primary and in the general, they say, oh, it's because of social media. Oh, it's because he's charismatic. Oh, because he smiles a lot. It was a joyful candidacy. And while all of those things are a factor to his success, the it factor, if I were to identify one, would be that he identified the 5 key things that people were suffering from and said, I am going to sincerely fight for you and tackle these issues for you. At its base, that is what democracy is. That is what small d democracy is. That's what the democratic process is supposed to be. But in our duopoly, we have forgotten about that key principle, the fundamental democratic principle. Are you paid by the Republicans to denounce the Dems? Can we watch Son of the Century? Yeah, I'm paid by the Republican Party to denounce the Democrats so that I can make the Democrats a more effective party against the Republicans because I want to defeat the Republicans, unlike the Democrats who want to become the Republicans. No, I hate Republican politicians. I hate conservatism. I hate reactionary politics. I abhor these things. I think they're very violent in its most maximalist. When it reaches its logical conclusion, it is incredibly violent. I think it's not a good worldview. It's not productive. It's not positive. It's not good. And my anger and resentment towards the Democrats actually stems from the fact that they are far too close to the Republicans in policy. And for that reason, they end up losing. And even if they do win, they still maintain the same neoliberal attitude that causes frustration within the base. It's too little, too late. It's too marginal. It's too inconsequential. That's it. That's the problem. That's the frustration. That's where the anger stems from. That's where the resentment stems from. Not like a secret op to the Democrats or anything, okay? I think that is just pure copium from Democrats who want to feel as though their worldview, who are frustrated and don't want their worldview to be questioned, okay? Get to the IRL, little bro, in half an hour.
to get to in this show, including newly released emails from accused Jeffrey Epstein, raising questions about what President Trump may have known.
Moment, but first, have you heard? I know you have. The government shutdown is officially over. After 43 days, the president signed a bill last night to reopen the government. Now, most Democrats, though, oppose this legislation because it does not address the rising health care costs. Nicole Killian is on Capitol Hill. Nicole, I know there's a lot of relief, but there's also a lot of frustration. But here's a big question. How soon could things get back to normal?
Hey, good morning to you, Gail. Thousands of federal workers are expected to be back on the job as soon as today and should get paid soon. Most SNAP recipients should see their benefits restored quickly, and Smithsonian museums here in the nation's capital will reopen in the coming days.
With the stroke of his pen, President Trump ended the longest government shutdown in U.S. history.
I hope we can all agree that the government should never be shut down again.
The bill is passed.
The law took effect immediately after the House narrowly approved the funding package, with 6 Democrats crossing party lines to join Republicans.
What do you think of the Democrats who supported the package tonight?
They did the right thing.
The measure extends government funding through January 30th, pays back federal workers while reinstating those who were fired, and guarantees SNAP or food assistance benefits for a full year.
I will be casting my vote as a no. In fact, it will be a hell no.
And vote yes. If not, you're the ones that are taking money from needy families.
Democrats largely oppose the legislation, arguing it failed to extend Affordable Care Act tax credits for 20 million Americans facing rising health insurance premiums.
This fight is not over. We're just getting started.
Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries filed a petition to force a vote to guarantee the subsidies for the next 3 years.
Are you still willing to negotiate on this issue with Republicans?
We've always been willing to negotiate in a bipartisan way, but Republicans have been unwilling to sit down and even have a conversation with Democrats.
Michael Gallantly heads a union for federal workers in Utah and questioned whether the shutdown was worth it.
It's kind of demoralizing, frankly, frustrating. I and my people are just trying to work for the American people.
President Trump said he's open to working with Democrats on health care, although he's made clear that he believes the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, should be overhauled. He also called for an end to the filibuster, a long-standing tradition in the Senate.
What is this? Hasan Biker has 4.5 million followers on Twitch and YouTube, is attempting to normalize the Chinese Communist Party. He's holding it up as something for America to emulate, disgusting and un-American, also entirely unsurprising. Cyrus Janison, speaker, YouTuber discussing China and geopolitics around the world, says, there is nothing wrong with the segment or anything said in this video. Michael is an aggressive China hawk who will always paint anything related to China in a negative light, when the simple reality is that China does provide many lessons for Westerners and specifically Americans to learn. Saying that is not anti-American. That's a shallow argument from Michael, who wants you to believe that China is our enemy and that the U.S. should not be doing business with China. What is the reality? Even POTUS recently met with Xi Jinping and struck a trade deal for one simple reason. The U.S. economy would collapse without China, and the Chinese economy also needs the U.S. market. The U.S. has had diplomatic and trade relations with China for over 60 years, and the American lifestyle that we know of and love would not be possible without China. There's nothing wrong with traveling to China, experiencing it, trying to learn what lessons we can bring back to America. Notice what Piker said here. I want high-speed rail in America. The simple reality is that China is a lot more similar to life in America than most people believe. China is a normal country like everywhere else in the world. People are working hard, families spend time together, and if you go to China with an open mind, you'll find Chinese people are very welcoming to foreigners, especially Americans, and are very proud of how fast and rapid their country has developed in recent years. This is 100% true. Like 100%, this is my experience as well, for the record. Michael has had the typical American exceptionalism mindset that is toxic and not conductive to being a world citizen. The U.S. is a great country, but we need to stop lying to ourselves that the American way of life is superior. There are dozens of countries around the world that can make the argument of being better in many aspects of quality of life. I'm proud to be a U.S. citizen, but also realize there's a lot to learn from others, China included, and I'm glad the international tourism to China has skyrocketed in the past 2 years as more and more people go to China and discover it themselves. Viewpoints like Michael's are outdated and quickly declining in popularity. It's just like, ironically enough, what they call what I'm doing propaganda, and they use the term propaganda in a negative fashion, obviously, right? But like what they declare to be propaganda is actually what they declare to be propaganda is unironically them trying to do propaganda. It's cutting through the fucking noise. But that's precisely the reason why They just have to like clip chimp and fear monger and constantly be like, don't look over there, don't look over there, don't look over there, don't look over there, don't look over there. They compare you going to China to others going to Israel and how you are a hypocrite. Yeah, okay. Promo tweet. Oh, it came out. Mega U.S. influencer Hasan Piker explains why he's in China. Hasan, also known as HasanAbi, is a prominent Twitch streamer offering political commentary and media analysis. A content creator, influencer, political commentator who speaks to young Americans like mainstream media could only dream of. His unique take on current affairs has helped him amass a combined 4.5 million on Twitch, followers on Twitch and YouTube.
I also wanted to show my audience and the Western world in general that there are a lot of rumors about China. There's a lot of misunderstandings and also just outright lies, and that it's just another normal country, just like every other country is.
This is Hasan Piker, an American online streamer, influencer, and a political commentator who wields significant influence over the young demographic in the US. He's known for his daily streams featuring political commentary and media analysis, and has amassed a combined 4.5 million followers on Twitch and YouTube. In his streams, he often discusses China's development with his viewers. Now, he has finally taken his first trip to China.
I know Beijing's your first stop in your whole travel plan in China.
I think it's the same clip. We watched this already.
Prevent future.
The 5. AOC made this whole thing up. Oh my God.
The socialist fever in the Democratic Party seems to be spreading after Zoran Mom. Over in Seattle, they have just elected a socialist mayor, Katie Wilson, an inexperienced far-left radical who got financial support from her parents. She's on track to take down the incumbent Democratic mayor who has worked in city politics for almost 2 decades. AOC, meanwhile, is trying to get Trump voters in on the communist revolution.
I fully welcome Trump voters into our coalition. And I know that sounds crazy to some people, but just hear me out. I cannot tell you, it just happened to me like 2 weeks ago. I can't tell you how many times someone has pulled me aside and said either I was once a big Trump voter and a Trump supporter and I watched Fox News every day, but then I started to kind of expand my world and where I got information. And now I've learned and now I've changed and I'm with you and I learn from you.
But will Trump voters really feel at home in the current Democratic Party? Former MSNBC host Chris Matthews notes how they turned into a party of snobs.
Democrats were an urban and a rural party.
They're still that.
Are they a rural party?
The people that didn't get a college are voting for Trump. Why? Because of snobbery and attitude.
Pennsylvania Democratic Senator John Fetterman, who earlier today got rushed to the hospital after a fall near his home in Pennsylvania, and thankfully he's doing okay. But before that scary incident I mentioned, he was talking about the level of hatred he gets on social media.
I love that the socialist division, the socialist flank of the Democratic Party has actually finally made Republicans start to create this distinction between normal Democrats and socialist Democrats. Notice how these very same guys, MHUD, everyone has been stealing your clip. They've been posting it on Twitter. I'm letting you know, you're too late to the game. Megaphonics was the first, of course, expected to come in and be like, this is what happened to John Fetterman. They found the video. That's fine. Oh no, it's spreading. I'm assuming there will be, by the end of today, there will be like at least 100,000 people who genuinely think this is the actual video of John Fetterman falling. Also, what I was saying is the actual left populist flank of the Democratic Party, the socialist flank of the Democratic Party, has caused the Republicans who say Nancy Pelosi's a communist to literally go back and be like, actually, never mind. Those are the real Democrats. Those are the good Democrats. What happened? I thought Democrats were entirely a communist party. What the fuck happened? What happened? Now they're even defending Democrats. How did this happen? Perhaps there is a lesson to be learned from this. Perhaps the lesson for establishment Democrats and centrist Democrats is not to actually fight back against their left flank, but to lean into it, because that ends up creating a threat for the Republicans, so much so that they start backpedaling. They get on the defensive. They start trying to show centrist Democrats as the reasonable position. It's so funny seeing Fox News talk about how we want a strong Democratic Party for the first time ever. Okay? Normally, that's just that's what Nancy Pelosi used to say, right? You don't hear that from anybody else. I ain't never heard a Republican talk about good Democrats until some real fighters came around and they decided, oh, fuck, we had it too good for too long. Didn't even realize that there was a real threat out here. Anyway, yeah, this is not actually John Fetterman. I have to keep saying that because I know someone's going to fall for this misinformation eventually. I think that they're realizing that Trump had motion and momentum because he leaned into the base. He leaned into the demands of the base and he highlighted them and he won. I mean, he saw a lot of success for that reason. And there was a lot of internal resistance at first. And then they became the Trump party. And not only did they become the Trump party, but American politics was redefined by Donald Trump. Just as American politics was redefined by Ronald Reagan, and just as American politics was redefined by FDR, Trump was a Trump was a transformational figure for American politics. Okay? Obviously, FDR is the only good example of this, by the way. The positive transformation. Reagan is a negative one, and Trump is also a negative one. But my point is, they are fearful of also, the Republicans are fearful of the Democrats having a similar transformational figure in the Democratic Party. Okay? That's what they are afraid of. They're afraid of a Trump-style figure rising from the left, rising from the socialist alternative flank of the party that will, of course, lean into the desires of the base of support within the Democratic Party and basically recreate an FDR 2.0 style situation, if not even better than that, right? Move American policymaking and American infrastructure in a positive direction for once after decades of stagnation or deterioration.
For members of his own party.
The right would say really rough things and names. You know, some names I won't repeat on TV, but the on the left it was like they want me to die, or that we're cheering for your next stroke, or that's terrible that depression won. Why couldn't it depression won? And I hope your kids find you. They even have like the graphic, a GIF where they have like a stroke, in your head.
So, Greg, there's a slew of secret socialists whispering in AOC's ear.
Yeah, I love, she says, I can't tell you how many times Trump supporters have come up to me and said, yes on Democrat socialism, and I can learn from you. Well, I can tell you how many. 0. Didn't happen. She made it up. Because one thing you know about Trump supporters, they're pretty solid on their beliefs about socialism. They make it pretty clear. That's like a dog saying, I can't believe how many times a fire hydrant has come up to me and said, hey, I really like getting peed on. Because that's what socialists look at America as a petri dish. We're the lab rats in their experiment. AOC is saying, lab rats, come join us. Embrace your tormentors. All socialists begin by saying they're Democrat socialists. And then when that fails, they drop the adjective. They go full authoritarian. Look at Venezuela. The leader, I can't remember, was it?
Buttfeld. They are desperate to talk about anything other than Epstein, huh? Yeah. Yep.
The ugly guy or the other guy.
Talking about, by the way?
He pushed socialism for the 21st century. That was the slogan. Then he quickly shifted.
Oh my God. No. Wait, because I've tweeted this GIF at him dozens of times. I'm so glad he's seeing our work. Oh my God. That's the GIF he's talking about. Oh my God. Completely asinine lol. He tries to come off as an intellectual with all them bullshit ass papers in front of him. What a joke. I mean, he has a fucking poop mug in front of him. I don't think he's trying to come across as an intellectual. These guys abhor intellectualism. They genuinely think it's like a negative thing. They want an uneducated populace to be stupid, angry, resistant to change in the positive direction, lacking hope. They love their stupids. In many instances, they're actually much more intelligent than they let on, I would say. Maybe not Greg Buttfeld, but
authoritarianism he took control of the military, took control of the courts, took control of the elections, concentrated power. That's what happens. There's no such thing as Democrat socialism. It's just socialism. There's a class system here. It's the people who make decisions and the rest of us. Trump's role in that bifurcation, he's the agent on behalf of the rest of us. He's our a-hole lawyer that protects us from the elites. AOC pretends that it's the same role that they provide, that you could just simply switch lawyers. Come over to our side. She is actually arguing on the power structure that made our lives hell. Think about everything that she's done. She was for defunding the police, higher taxes, more regulation. She chased Amazon out of New York. She's pro-sanctuary and trans, cashless bail. None of these things, any Trump supporter would ever go for. So she's making this whole thing up. As for Fetterman, he touched on the hierarchy of smears. And I said it before, you can call me Hitler means that I can call you fat. Because in the hierarchy of smears, you left a whole lot of turf under Hitler. We will insult you till the cows come home. Shout out to The View. But we don't wish you're dead. We don't wish you're dead, but it's great because the personal smears hurt more because I can look in the mirror and go, I know I'm not Hitler. But when they look in the mirror, they go, yeah, they're right. I'm fat.
You're not fat, Greg.
No, I was talking about Haley, you pilgrim.
Whoops. I do look like a pilgrim today. Sorry about that. Should have saved it for Thanksgiving. Dana, there's this mixed message where we're told there's no socialist takeover, and yet in Seattle you have a socialist winning. In New York City, you have the whispering socialist, AOC.
Yeah, so I've been pretty interested in all of this for a while because when Zohran Mamdani was on the upswing, I looked around and I said, guys, it's coming to a city near you. And we looked, yes, in Minnesota, he tried but failed. But in Seattle, I was interested in this race because the other guy that was running is a diverse guy who grew up with nothing, worked very hard, worked his way up. And she, again, borrowed money from her parents to do all of this. She and her husband choose to live in a 600 square foot studio apartment with a toddler. And she says, you too can live like me. Right. And now, but the other Democratic choice, and it's not that the guy who worked really hard and worked his way up was a Republican. He's not. He's a Democrat. And he's sitting there looking around going, wait, what? Wasn't I like the poster child for what we were going to be? The DSA has been quietly and systematically working to build their troops. And bad policy will beat no policy every time. They're super smart about it. They know how to organize. They have...
Yeah, you know what's even better than bad policy that beats no policy? Good policy. Bad policy beats no policy is the Republican method. Republicans do bad policy, and it beats the Democratic Party's no policy. But what's even better than bad policy is good policy. And that's precisely what the socialist flank is trying to develop, is trying to build.
Classes where you can learn how to speak better. They are teaching people how to go and be persuasive. Now, in a lot of ways, to me, it's like the counter to Turning Point USA. And thankfully, Turning Point USA is growing so much. And their mission is assured because of Erica Kirk's stewardship there. And they're going to need them because Peter Thiel, who's an amazing entrepreneur and somebody, a technologist, he also says that it's understandable why younger people today are pulled in this direction because they feel that capitalism is not working for them. So if they're only getting that message and not hearing from anybody else, then that is going to win every single time. And that young white woman, the awful, she is going to end up probably beating the guy who worked his way up through the Democratic Party. And he's now the establishment, and they don't want the establishment. Even if he checks all of the boxes, if he is not socialist, they don't want him.
I think that's a fascinating way. I'd not thought about that. The DSA as the other side of the coin to Turning Point. I think that's spot on. It's terrifying, Jesse.
I'm not terrified.
The DSA literally does not have the same institutional, the same institutional legitimacy within the Democratic Party as the Turning Point USA does within the Republican Party. It's not even an appropriate comparison. And they already recognize that it's not an appropriate comparison when they say it's actually they're building their ranks from the side. You wouldn't say that about Turning Point USA because TPUSA is completely aligned, if not directly a weapon directly a part of the Republican Party infrastructure. Also, my queen, Jessica Tarlov, is not on this panel I'm seeing.
Just don't scare me. If you have a mayor who's out of control and she's a socialist and she runs one of these big cities, the president has to do his job and the governor has to do his job. You're basically babysitting a bunch of children. If they're not going to keep the streets safe, if they're not going to build new housing, you just got to Bigfoot them and come in. Now, the AOC thing, it's funny that she said that because the other day some black lesbian came up to me and she said, "I've had it. I'm ultra MAGA." It happens to me all the time. You'd be surprised. Sure. I actually know people that went the other way. They were pretty famous. I think his name was...
Ugh. He is so fucking gross and unbearable. Jesus Christ. Thank God my queen, Jessica, doesn't have to sit through this, at least today, you know? As someone who works in policy, which theoretically apolitical in nature, there's a growing sentiment that all Trump has really done is expose who wasn't leading, but was adopting buzzwords without any understanding of root cause or systemic / transformative change. They misunderstood the left so hard they accidentally made a left-shaped sized door to lead towards change. Why is the right doing identity politics now? Because they are, because they're losing, okay? Or they're at least very fearful of losing. And when you are losing, you hit the fucking back pedal, okay? You start behaving like Democrats do. Also, Republicans have always done identity politics, let's be real, as the chatters are correctly pointing out. When have they not done IDPOL? They just do white IDPOL, usually. And they do a shittier version of like, the token IDPOL. But that's still very much IDPOL in the direction of white men in particular. Here's also Jesse Waters on his own show, apparently having it tough. Jesse Waters so awfully bricked my internet, dude. He bricked my Google Chrome. God damn it. God damn it, Jesse. Why'd you do this to me? Come on. Shit. Wait, it worked. Never mind. Turned on the task manager and started working again. Okay. Let's take a look.
So they're launching a smear campaign disguised as a bombshell. The Jeffrey Epstein emails. Congress is dumping thousands of documents, and Democrats are using them to frame Trump. But we've been combing through them and can't find anything nailing Trump. Even Axios says the emails contained no real smoking gun. The files do show Epstein's deep ties to liberals, like anti-Trump author Michael Wolff. So they're launching a smear campaign disguised as a bombshell. The Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay. Once again, it's a testament to how bad the Democrats are, I guess, that they just didn't deploy this tactic during the election, which is a question that I do have for the Democrats in general.
I think Tulsi, I think Musk, I think Rogan, and everybody forgets my good friend Jeff Van Drew. These are people who did leave the Democrat Party and came to be ultra MAGA, and that's fine. You swing back, and people do swing. And that's why, Greg, don't look at me like that. But that's why this administration has to go blank to the wall before the midterms, or else they're going to get whacked on costs. The snob factor. What's changed is 20 years ago, you'd probably do your best to hide your snobbery. Today, you broadcast it. You just casually drop in conversation that, Dartmouth keeps hitting me up for donations. Like, when will they stop? Or like my Guatemalan housekeeper, she left for like 2 weeks. I don't know what I'm going to do. And what this does, it's so alienating and it's so off-putting that you feel like you're living in another country. And at a certain point, a lot of the middle and working class, they do feel like they're living in another country. And that's why you have people that like, what's a pronoun? I remember on this show last year.
It's so funny. They're like, please, can we get back to culture war, please? Please, 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 I'm begging. Please, dude, think about how good things were when we were talking about culture war stuff. Don't do the socialism stuff. Socialism means transgender for all. That's what it means. Please. Awesome.
I didn't know what a trans was. I still don't understand what that means. And I don't care how many times Harold tries to explain it.
I've never tried to explain it.
Greg is right. You hear us talk about Biden, He's sleepy, he's slow, he's corrupt, he's incompetent. But we don't want him dead. But the way they talk about Trump, this guy's a Nazi, needs to die in prison. What they said about Charlie, what they said about Fetterman. And I wrote a book about this. I don't know if you guys remember. It's called Get It Together, still available where books are sold. It's about He's gotten me to read the Bible. I'm reading about sin. And this is all based in envy. Now, it's the one sin that doesn't feel good.
Wow.
And that's what they all have. They're envious.
What about the one of murdering someone?
Harold, that's a good legacy to leave, getting Jesse to read the Bible.
Two most important commandments are love the